Hi guys, this is Arif from TechShare. Today I'm going to explain the new feature that we saw in Sitecore 10.2. This feature is not sort of recommended at this stage, but I thought let's explore and explain about this pipeline concurrency feature. So that's why I thought, okay, let's create a small video for that. So we are going to deep dive into this some pipeline processors and concurrency. How can we, what is the main sort of thing that we've seen in Sitecore 10.2. So let me quickly go through some of the lines here. So it says that you can run multiple pipeline processors concurrently by enabling async mode. And the second line says that this allows you to invoke each processor in a separate task, which sounds really exciting. And this can improve performance when starting Sitecore from scratch. So when you are going to start your Sitecore application at the very beginning, then you see thousands of different, hundreds of different pipelines, if not thousands. It actually runs like based on your application. And then obviously it takes a lot of time sometimes. But if you configure your pipeline, if you could, then in a task oriented way, then definitely that will improve the performance in terms of utilizing your CPU and this kind of thing. But I'm not sort of convinced the way that they explain here, because it says that this is this feature is experimental and must not be used for production purpose. Okay, then what the hell. We strongly recommend testing the feature thoroughly. So what I understand is, this is basically the concept. So Sitecore out of the box provides a lot of different pipelines. So obviously you would have had your different processors, you would have had injected in different ways and in different pipelines, right? Your processor, so that you can do some work with the different pipelines. And then you might have your own pipeline that you created along the way for different features. Then obviously you can utilize this feature there, because for example, if you want to have a pipeline, and if you when you designed the pipeline, then you thought, okay, let's divide the different work in a processor, and I found all those processors are quite independent. There is no sharing of data between two processors, and it really doesn't matter whether on processor starts finish and or in fast, whatever this sequence, it really doesn't matter. Then you can definitely utilize this feature. But if you really want one processor to go and then the next processor, then you can also accept that one through this async. Then you need to await basically each of the processor, and then you can accept that, or you can even use the sync. So my scenario, I was thinking scenario like, you have a pipeline and then your processor is completely independent, doing some independent task. Maybe one processor is downloading something and doing some calculation, the second processor is doing something else, and completely independent, there is no data sharing. Then maybe you can do that sort of approach there. But if you want to share the data between different processors, then you cannot use this way, because it says at the bottom that these pipeline arguments are not thread safe. So you must run all processors that share and modify the same pipeline argument data in a sync mode. Okay, so you need to use the sync mode. Now I'm gonna show you guys this thingy here. So if you open the Sitecore, basically this folder, let me go to Sitecore CM site. In the app config include example, and then you have seen there is a configuration for this. This is called Sitecore experimental async initialization. And then you'll see here that the initialization pipeline that Sitecore has, basically very big sort of pipeline, where you will find a lot of different processors doing a lot of different things. And here they have basically given this kind of example here that we'll enable this one, and we'll see how does it look. But initially when we run the show configuration for my CM, then you will see, let me go there, that initialized processor. Then I will see here, this is basically my initialized processor, and let me refresh this one because I did some changes there before, and you'll see here it will load now, and it's taking a bit time. Yeah, here we go. So now if I go the initialized processor here, pipeline, sorry, and then you'll see this is basically the typical initialized pipeline. So you have this processor number 1 here, show version, and then blah blah blah, a lot of different processors one by one you can see here under this initialized pipeline. Right now, this is basically the old approach of doing thing, and it works. Obviously it definitely work, and it will work, and there is nothing to expect sort of in terms of performance boost or anything such that, because they are basically the similar implementation that we've had since the very beginning of Sitecore. But now if you see here, this is one, I'm going to enable this one, and what it is doing is it is patching the attribute run mode. So based on the documentation that they provide, that they are saying that now we can basically add extra attribute to the processor level, which is called run mode. So in the run mode extra attribute, we can pass basically different values. So you can pass the run mode as sync. So this is basically the default behavior. So if you don't pass anything, then obviously out of the box it will work as a sync. And very interestingly, you can pass async to end. Interesting, and async. So they are basically two different things. So async to end, basically it says that this pipeline invokes the processor in a separate task, which is fine. The task finish when the pipeline is done. So basically that particular processor will be executing at the very end intentionally. And then async, obviously this is the default one. So if you have 5 different processors and everything is marked as async, then and if you want to call the pipeline, then pipeline basically will enable, for example, if you have 5 processors with async, then it will basically execute 5 different tasks, and you never know which one will finish first, which one will finish last. It doesn't matter, because it depends on the volume of computational things that it happens internally each of the processors. So it will depend basically which one will which is the easy one, that will definitely finish fast, and this way it will finish. So there won't be anything like data sharing or anything, because if you wanna do that sort of data sharing, then that will not support here. But you can obviously, if those different processors are completely independent, then definitely it will give you a lot of benefit. And await or wait async basically is the same as await. What I understand is it will also introduce the task, the pipeline awaits. So for example, you have 5 processor, and on the very last one say await async. That basically means the pipeline waits for all async processor that is started before the current processor to run. So that particular processor will start when all the remaining async processor will complete. So if you have 5 different processors, then 4 out of 5 has marked as async, and the last one is marked as, for example, wait async. Means basically it will not execute unless and until the rest of 4 different async processors finished. So this is in a way that if you want to sort of execute a certain processors in a certain order, then you can basically use this await sync. Okay, and then I think the important, these two basically in conjunction of the, in a pipeline you can basically use these two. So anytime if you want a wait async, wait async basically means the one which are actually executing before that particular processor will definitely finish, and then it will execute. So that way it will at least give some sort of synchronization. But again, that will not help to share the data, because it says that it will not basically, it is not a thread safe way of, obviously, because they are actually running as a task. So you can't basically pass anything in the arguments, because that is not supported here. So okay, enough talking. Let me quickly enable this one and see how does it work. So for example, at this moment you can see here, so what is it? Yeah, so it has nothing about sync or async or whatever. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to doing this thingy here. So what I'll do is in the example folder, this one I'm gonna remove this example suffix from this name, and then obviously that will enable this configuration, and that will eventually reset my IIS. And if I refresh now, and then obviously it will take slight time, and then if you see, then you'll see that basically synchronization or this kind of attribute will already be there, because that is basically the patch that we just did. So if you see now in the initialization, then you will see this run would have successfully injected here, obviously. And then async to in means basically this guy should run based on the definition. It says, let me open the definition file one more time, which is here. Sorry, why my PC is so slow. So wait, async, what does it say? So this one basically async to end, and async to end means this pipeline invokes the procedure in a separate task, so it will execute, but the task finish when the pipeline is done. So when the pipeline is finished, then the task will finish basically. And this one will be there won't be any priority for this one, so that will be basically finished at the very end. This is what it says. And then the next one, where is the next one? Let me open. And this one, this guy, set globals, this one has marked as async, so basically it will simply execute, and basically and it will finish. We don't know when, because based on the task processor, this set globals, if it takes like 5 seconds, then it will finish basically after 5 seconds. But the other one, init site manager, you can see here, this one is marked as nothing, means sync. So this will work as a sort of sync approach. And then this one is async, this will run individually, and this one is also sync. So if there is nothing explicitly mentioned, then that will also be run as sync. So very interesting, because you see here this one, so some of them marked as sync means they will definitely so if you see here, when we initialize, when we run the initialize pipeline, right, so take from the start. So at the very start, you see this processor, right, this processor, and this processor will run as async mode, obviously, but it will set the priority very less, so that it can run at the very end, for example. So the CPU will be given this processor a very less priority, but it will start. So that what it says here. So the pipeline invokes the processor in a separate task. That makes sense, but the priority will be very less. That's why the task finish will be done. The task will be finished at the very bottom, at the very last, or you can say when your pipeline will be finished. So that makes sense. And then the second processor, so that will run then, and then it is marked as async, so it simply execute. It will not take any control or anything. There is nothing to pass to the next processor or anything such, so it will simply execute. And then immediately it will take the third one, and third one doesn't mark anything, means that will be running as a sync approach, and basically this one will execute next. And this one basically this one will execute, and it will wait to finish it basically. And then this one again sync async, so that this one will start and then immediately it will pass the cursor to the next one, because it doesn't matter for this processor whether it will finish and then start. So there won't be anything such, because this is async, so it will start and immediately go to the next processor. And this processor is also sync, means it will start and it will not go to the next processor until it finished or completed. So that way it will basically work. So it will start from the top, and then it will tell or the execution of the pipeline will happen in a way that basically determine whether this attribute will determine whether this particular process and what would be the behavior of the particular process in terms of execution. So overall, that is basically very new to me, and I was thinking very beginning that what would happen. So well, this is an approach. I would say maybe it is useful. So if you now, for example, go and refresh your site CM, then you'll see, I don't know if there is any performance. So let me see and how much time it takes. But at this moment my computer is too slow somehow, but it might take some resource or CPU more, and then it will quickly. So you see here, it is basically very quick. It was quite quick. So I just did and refresh and instantly it loads. So obviously it has something, but again, when you are using sync async, this kind of approach, that will definitely that is sort of a risk, because when you have a production environment, then you're gonna use this kind of thing. Sometimes it would be very, very painful for you guys, especially when you're gonna manage a lot of different processors and you are running this kind of approach. Then you will be lost completely, which one is going where and this kind of thing. And but if you have your own pipeline that you're gonna create, and you understand that, okay, the different processors it uses, they are completely independent and there is nothing to worry about, and it is quite small, maybe 4 or 5 maximum processors it has, then you can definitely apply this kind of thing and you will definitely get some performance boost. But overall, I will not be using this feature in our Sitecore core pipelines, or if I need to extend or add anything there to achieve any feature or develop any feature. I'm not gonna use this one at all. But we might use this one. Or you might see this one beneficial along the way after some time, because they just introduced this one. But obviously, I understand this is basically it will be lost completely if you just simply run a processor and you really don't care about the processor, whether it or when actually it finish or not. Or I think the main magic or benefit of using pipeline basically is to sharing data between your processor one by one, and that benefit you will definitely want to get, right? So this way I don't want to do that. But unless you have a pipeline where you know that, okay, I have defined 4 processors and they are completely independent, that way, then obviously you can use that one to get some performance boost or some resources, more resources from the CPU. All right, so let me know your thought here. I wanted to implement a small sort of application to show this kind of, maybe creating a new pipeline and how can we, but it really doesn't make sense, because it should be really clear for you guys, because this is basically the example that they have given, and you can enable this one and they are quite easy and self-explanatory. So you really don't need to create your own pipeline to demonstrate this feature, because this is basically self-explanatory and quite easy to understand. That's all. See you later very soon. Bye bye.